Hello, this is a video about an alternative theory of time. I am mainly addressing spiritual seekers, such as followers of Advaita, or people who have the goal to live in the so-called here and now, uh, live with fewer or no thoughts at all, um, being free from the past, and so on. Because the theory relates to all that. Uh, the theory I will attempt to explain is from Eugene T. Gendlin, who developed a psychological approach called focusing with an associated philosophy called philosophy of the implicit. His theory of time is similar to the one of uh, by Martin Heidegger in his book Being and Time. These philosophies are not merely speculative theories, but phenomenological in nature. That means they aim to explore how things are experienced from a first person perspective, very much like Advaita. However, they do arrive at some results that are different from the usual assumptions of at least most spiritual paths. Related to the topic of time, in those paths it is assumed that the past is only present in the form of thoughts, and the same applies to the future. So, according to that, we know the past only by a mental, for instance, a mental replaying of past events or by verbal thoughts about the past. And I think this is not true. We don't need thoughts at all. Of course, a replaying of the past or verbal thoughts can happen, and often uh, does happen. But even in everyday life, we definitely don't need thoughts in order to know what is relevant from the past. For instance, when I'm talking now, I'm using words I learned at school, so in the past, and I'm building on what I read about those philosophies also in the past, and I'm building on my technical knowledge of using this equipment to produce a video, and I obey certain social rules, and my body contributes with movements, with appropriate movements, and a bodily regulation of hormones and blood pressure and so on. And all this converges into the words I'm saying now. That is, I'm saying these words spontaneously, and I'm not listing those factors that contribute. I'm not listing them up. I'm not thinking them explicitly. For instance, when I use the English words, I don't recall with every word where the learning situations when I learned them, and I do not look them up in a kind of inner dictionary or so. The term in Gentlin's philosophy for what does happen is implicit functioning of the past. So the contributing factors usually do not exist as explicit formulated data. And this is typical for everyday life. It would actually be impossible to have all relevant information as explicit thoughts because it would need too many thoughts, and they would need to be synthesized or integrated or adapted into one action or speech action. There is an overlooked phenomenon, um, which is a directly had or sometimes felt meaning. you can watch that with yourself. If you look at something, at anything, actually, you immediately have a meaning which you do not represent in terms of verbal thoughts or so. And even if we have explicit formulated thoughts, we need this had or felt meaning in order to understand the thoughts themselves. Because without this implicit level of understanding, words would just be a series of sounds, and images would just be pixels, so to speak. To make sense of these sounds or pixels, we need implicit functioning. Do you see the point? What is also important is that with uh, implicit functioning of the past, only the relevant information of the past contributes. For instance, right now, my knowing of Italian or German doesn't contribute because those languages are not relevant, since I would like to address English speaking people in their language right now. So, relevance has to do with the future, with what I'm up to. In this case, why I would like to talk here and whom I would like to address. If I would want to address German speaking people, the German words I learned in the past would be relevant. This is a small example of an interaction between future and past. And on the other hand, if my past would have been such that I had learned Italian instead of German, I would rather have the intention to address Italian people, probably. So that would be an interaction the opposite direction between past and future. The real interaction between past and future is a kind of so-called crossing, in the way that the past, influenced by the future, interacts with the future influenced by the past. It is as if future and past creatively try to come to a mutual agreement that is a win-win situation for both. So this is an organismic function. The organism functions in a meaningful way. Of course, there is also a present of what occurs or manifests, and this present also interacts with both past and future. For instance, if the present were now suddenly such that I realize that, say, the screen of the computer is black, I would probably change my plans and interrupt my talk in order to fix this problem. So then, because of the present occurring, the fixing of that technical problem would be what I am up to, and for fixing it, fi- very different past learnings would be relevant than for giving the talk. In terms of the interaction of present and future, it is obviously very important in how far the present occurring supports or fulfills what we are up to, what is implied as the organism's next step. So the experienced time is not a linear sequence of past, present, and future, where the past is unchangeable and all points on the timeline, so to speak, have the same weight as in the classical time model of a timeline with points on it. On the contrary, the experience past can even change in hindsight, what is called retroactively. For instance, a person who used to believe that his mother never loved him might find out, for instance, in a therapy, that in reality she was only constantly overwhelmed and didn't show her love, but that she did love him. That might have a big impact on the future life of that person. The retroactive change would, of course, not change the chronological time. For instance, what a camcorder might have recorded of his mother's behavior will remain the same. But here we are dealing with our first person perspective of time. Actually, every time you have an insight about the past, that it was different from what you thought before, there is such a retroactive change. This also applies to Advaita when we find that we are awareness and that this means we have unknowingly been awareness in the past. As I said before, the experience time, the time we live in, is an interaction in the form of a mutual agreement between past, present, and future. If we function well, this interaction leads to a fitting creative solution. This also means that if we function well, the influence of a past is not a conditioning of which we are victims. The past can, so to speak, be a servant, or it can dominate. And if it is a servant, we are not victims of our conditioning. But of course, there is a common phenomenon that the implicit functioning and interaction between past, present, and future is only partially functioning, so that the past is kind of dominating the experiencing. This is very obvious with flashbacks of traumatic memories or related reoccurrence of related emotions or obsessive thoughts, rigid belief systems, and so on. In Gentlin's terms, this phenomenon is called structure-bound experiencing, and one can explain it, and one can also deal with that or kind of heal that. And the focusing method is a way to deal with that. But that would be quite another topic. But the existence of explicit thoughts as such is not necessarily a sign of structure-bound experiencing. Verbal thoughts or inner images are not as such good or bad. They can have a life forward or a life impeding function. Yeah, but maybe this is enough for this video. Thank you for watching.